Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Dr. James Gordon, and he's here to share with us his new book, The Transformation: Discovering Wholeness and Healing After Trauma. Now, Dr. Gordon is a Harvard-educated psychiatrist, former researcher at the National Institute of Mental Health, and chair of the White House Commission on Complementary and Alternative Medicine Policy, and a clinical professor of psychology and family medicine at Georgetown Medical School. He has authored and edited 10 previous books, including Unstuck, Your Guide to the 7-Stage Journey Out of Depression. Dr. Gordon has written for a range of publications, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, and the Guardian, as well as a number of professional journals. He has served as an expert for such outlets as 60 Minutes, Today, Good Morning America, CBS Sunday Morning, Nightline, CNN, NPR, and many others. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. James Gordon.
Thank you, Marianne. It's good to be here.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here, and what a profound book The Transformation is.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I hope it is. I hope it will help people both experience the depths and also the heights of what's possible for them.
Well, I think a lot of people are, at this time, it seems like more people are digging into past traumas, things that have held them back. And you have really dug into this I believe it's for the last 30 or so years. Is that correct?
Well, it's more like 50 years. For 30 years, we've been using this program of trauma healing and stress relief at the Center for Mind-Body Medicine, and using it with whole populations that have been traumatized. But I've really been doing this work, and it's been developing over the last 50 years since I've been a doctor.
Wow. Well, and so why did you feel that this time was the right time for this book?
Well, you know that the subtitle here is Discovering Wholeness and Healing After Trauma. And trauma is so much on our minds, so much in the air that we breathe, quite literally. I mean, we're all experiencing traumas that affect our whole country here in the United States. For example, issues related to climate-related disasters, school shootings, having large numbers of veterans coming back from being deployed and going through difficult times, living in communities that are dealing with poverty and opioid addiction and violence. So there's a kind of general air of having to deal with trauma. Plus, for me, it was the right time to do the book, because I was trying to write a book that would be for everyone. Previous book I wrote focused on depression and gave people ways to move through depression. And a number of people said to me, it's really good, and I love the approach you're using. And I'm looking for something from you, that's people talking to me, I'm looking for something from you that everyone can use, that I can use, that I don't have to be depressed to use. Why don't you write a book for all of us? And I thought, well, all of us go through trauma. If we don't experience it early in life because of discrimination or poverty or abuse or neglect, most of us are going to deal with it in our adult years as we have to face challenges of separation or divorce or a child's illness or disappointments at work or a parent's illness or death. And if not during our midlife, then certainly toward the end of life, as we deal with our own increasing frailty and the loss of people we love and our own death. And so what came clear to me is that a book for everyone is a book that helps us to deal with the trauma that comes inevitably to all of us in all of our lives, as well as the trauma that occurs around us and that affects us either directly or indirectly just because we're living in this, troubled 21st century. So this is a book that's designed to be for everyone and to provide a pathway for understanding and dealing with and moving through trauma. And as we do it, guidance in discovering greater meaning and purpose, more connection and love with other people, becoming who we're meant to be. So this is a book that is a kind of culmination of all the work that I've been doing really over the last 50 years. And not only work with other people, but work on myself. Everything that I'm teaching in this book, all the different techniques and tools that I'm teaching other people to use, I use in my own life. So it just felt like the right time to put it all together.
I think that's so encouraging for so many people to hear, because number one, as a doctor, here you are saying, I'm using these tools and techniques and resources for myself, and it's also something that you use, with the people that you come in contact with.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is that we're all much more alike than we are different, and the sooner we wake up to that fact, the better off we're going to be, because there's such a tendency, and it's been heightened in recent years, to think, oh, I'm different from that person or that person for whatever reason, because of my psychology, my background, my skin color, my religion. But what I've discovered in working with people of every imaginable ethnicity and age and political persuasion here in the United States and around the world is that in many ways the deep similarities are far more important than the differences. We have to recognize the differences. We have to appreciate them. But we also, there's so many things that we share in common. And the more we wake up to those things, including what we doctors have in common, we psychiatrists have in common with the people we're working with, the better off not only our patients are going to be, but the better off we're going to be. If we're not apart from them. And this is something I learned really, pretty early on when I was in medical school. I had a sense of connection. And I think this is so important. It was so important to me as a medical student and then as a doctor that I was really coming to work with people on a very in a partnership, in what I sometimes call a healing partnership. I wasn't somewhere up above them or far away from them, and that the struggles that they were having, I might not be having right now, but I was sure likely to have them at some other point in my life, and that the field in which we were working, the in which we were coming together was common. We were all in it together. We're all living here on this planet together. We all deal with the common issues of growing up and growing older and finding out who we are and dealing with our families. And that there's such a beauty and an enlivening quality in this understanding for me. One of the problems, and I don't really talk too much about this in the transformation, but one of the problems for health and mental health professionals and others too is that they burn out because they in a sense they're not fully engaged in the work that they're doing. They feel limited and they feel constricted. And one of the things about the approach that I'm taking and that I hope I convey to my readers is I'm here with you. We're talking about your life right now, but my life, in my life, I'm also dealing with the same issues, the same concerns. And I'm sharing with you not only the best scientific evidence and my clinical practice of 50 years, but I'm sharing with you my own life experience.
Well, I'm so glad, excuse me, I'm so glad that you're sharing that with us. And, it has me thinking, from reading your book and going through the information there, you talk about damage that that trauma creates. Is it possible to reverse that?
Yes, I think this is really important. I'm glad you're asking because it's a really important point. We often think, oh, I'm traumatized. These terrible events have happened. I'm never going to recover. One of the most important messages in the book, after acknowledging that, yes, terrible, very challenging things do happen to all of us, is that we all can recover. That doesn't mean we forget what's happened to us. That effort to forget often perpetuates, just drives the pain underground, and it comes up and hits us upside the head later on. But if we use the tools that I'm teaching, the tools of self-awareness, of self-regulation of the body and mind, tools that help to free us from the rigidity in our bodies and the tightness and the tension and the fear that mobilize our imagination, that we can not only recover from trauma, but that we can discover parts of ourselves and fulfill parts of ourselves we may never have even known about before. So even though trauma causes pain and throws us into chaos, out of that pain and out of that chaos, we can discover far greater meaning, purpose, love than we've ever experienced before. I was talking earlier this morning with someone about the trauma of the cancer diagnosis and of its treatment. And I was thinking about so many people I know and have worked with who've had cancer and who've said, I would not wish to have had cancer, and it has been the most important experience of my life. And those people have used the tools I'm teaching to quiet their anxiety, to release their stress, to mobilize their imagination and their capacity for hope, and to look at possibilities, not only possibilities of treatment that they hadn't thought about before, they were too scared or just weren't exposed to before, but also possibilities for living their lives differently, for doing things in a different way. Because what trauma does, and cancer certainly is one very significant kind of trauma, is it wakes us up to the urgency of doing what's most important to us and not just going along in a rut. One of the things that I have seen in working with people who are traumatized is as they move through the experience, whether it's moving through a cancer diagnosis and its treatment, or dealing with a divorce, or coming back from combat, or having suffered severe economic losses, is that they begin to focus on what's really important to me. They start paying more attention. They start acting on that growing understanding. And very often they become kinder, more generous, and more committed to helping other people. And that's not because anyone is saying you should do this. It's a kind of natural process and a part of their healing. And in the transformation, I sort of create a roadmap, not only for healing from the disrupted physiology and the disturbed psychology that comes with trauma, but a roadmap for reaching out to other people and discovering what is most important for you to do as a human being with the rest of your life.
Yeah, that is so important. I'm so glad that you shared that with us. And there's so much great information in the transformation. It's one of those books that is staying in my personal library. It talks also about that we may require step-by-step unwinding of the layers of like forgotten past events or buried feelings. How is that possible?
Well, I think what I've done in the book is to create a program for it. So the beginning of the program is, first of all, knowing that it's possible. And I tell some stories of people who've been very deeply traumatized, who've come through the trauma and come out on the other side. So that's one thing. Secondly, we need to bring our physiology back into balance. When we're traumatized, when something terrible has happened, there are two basic physiological reactions we have. One is we go into fight or flight. So it's as if our life is in danger. And this is a crucial response. If in fact our life is in danger, if there's a threat, a physical threat, for sure we have to get our heart racing faster and raise our blood pressure and put out more blood sugar and shut down digestion and get our muscles ready to fight or to run away. And that's fine. That can be life-saving. And even in an emotional situation, we need to get our guard up when we're threatened and to deal with it. The problem comes when that fight or flight response, which is meant to come quickly and go quickly, stays with us. And we continue to be in a state of agitation, hypervigilant, looking out for threats, anxious, having difficulty focusing, having difficulty sleeping. Those are the long-term effects of post-traumatic stress. The other thing that can happen when the trauma is overwhelming and inescapable, and listeners may have experienced this if they're as children with parents who are really, not very good at taking care of them and may have been abusive or neglectful. but you can't get away because you're a little kid. And the same thing may happen sometimes to adults who are in abusive relationships and feel they can't leave. Or it happens in a situation like combat or when a hurricane comes along. And there's really not much you can do. Sometimes we shut down and we go into what's called the freeze response, which is a kind of last ditch physical and psychological response. And our body may kind of collapse. We may feel numb. We withdraw psychologically from the situation that's causing us so much inescapable pain. Again, that can be life-saving in the midst of a situation that is overwhelming. It can be life-saving for little children who are being abused, or when a hurricane is devastating our neighborhood and we can't go anywhere or do anything. When it continues over time, or when we stay in a situation like that, for example, in a job situation where we're feeling abused or we're feeling sexually harassed and we stay there and we don't move, that chronic freeze state also causes significant damage. So we become anxious, we become depressed, we become more likely to drink, we become more irritable, more agitated, we don't focus so well. Our lives are really troubled. So we need to balance out those two physiological responses at the beginning of our trauma healing journey. So I teach a simple technique for balancing out fight or flight right at the beginning of the transformation. And it's slow, deep breathing. And you can do that. Listeners can do that with us just for a moment here. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, with your belly soft and relaxed. Being aware of the breath. Perhaps saying to yourself, soft as you breathe in, and belly as you breathe out. And feeling your belly be soft and relaxed. So that's the basic technique. If you do it for a while, I've been doing it for 40-some years regularly. Even for me, just this minute or two, I feel a little calmer, a little clearer. Just there's a smile on my face. And anyone can do this. And I recommend people do this. In the book, I go into detail about all the aspects of the physiology. But suffice it to say, it quiets the body, calms the mind, makes it easier to focus, and also makes it easier to connect with other people. So that's the beginning. That's one technique. Second technique for this process of unwinding is moving our bodies when we're traumatized. And I'm sure many of our listeners have experienced this. We feel constricted. We feel shut down. We may feel tight in our shoulders. We may have headaches. There's pain. There's tension. And we may be going over the same thoughts in our mind over and over again. Oh, I wish that hadn't happened. If only I had done this. So we need to begin to free ourselves from that constriction, from that frozen, shut down way of being physically and mentally. So I teach techniques for moving the body, just for shaking the body up. This is what animals do when they're traumatized. If you have a dog and the dog's been in a fight, what does she do after the fight? She shakes her body. Or what does she do if she's scared? She gets into a frozen state, and then afterwards she shakes her body. This is a natural response, a natural way to free ourselves from stress and trauma. So I teach that kind of technique. And then I teach techniques for mobilizing the imagination, doing simple drawings, for example, so that you can draw yourself with your biggest problem, and then draw yourself with your problem solved. So it gets, again, this is a way of mobilizing the imagination, which shuts down when we're traumatized, when we've been under chronic stress. And what the drawings do is they help people focus on a problem. And sometimes it's a problem they didn't even realize was there, but one that they really need to deal with. And sometimes it just helps to get it out there on the page. It's not just in my mind. There it is on the page. And then in the third drawing, they imagine a solution. And for many people, this is a revelation. It's such a simple technique. Often we feel there is no solution. And yet, when we take a couple of moments and we're not sort of banging our head against the wall, but just opening ourselves to our imagination, a solution may come up. I'm thinking of a woman I write about in the transformation. It was a woman in her 60s who was going to have to get a divorce from her powerful, abusive husband. He happened to be a U.S. senator. She also had a diagnosis of cancer. And what came to her in her imagination, she didn't know what to do or who to go to or who she could even talk to. All of a sudden, in her imagination, there appeared to her her aunt, whom she hadn't talked to in years. And she said, oh, that's who I need to reach out to. And she reached out to her, and there began a conversation that went on every day that helped her move through this whole crisis. Similarly, other people, I've worked with refugees, and in their solution to the problem, they've drawn a picture of a new home or of coming home to where they used to live. And they may say, well, I don't know if it can happen right now, but even to see that gives me some hope that it may be possible. So that's another stage. And there are many more stages of going through all these layers. Each one builds on the one before, and each one strengthens our understanding that we can make a difference in how we feel. We have the capacity to move through and beyond trauma. And when I say we, I mean all of us. And I write about young children. I write about people with little or no formal education. I write about very old people as well as middle-aged people and young people. Everyone has this capacity. And the purpose of the book is to help you as a reader to use these tools to mobilize your own capacity to help and heal yourself. And the evidence that I've seen of people who've used this program is that a very significant majority of them are able to move through and beyond their trauma and no longer be imprisoned and held back by it.
That is so encouraging, and it brings me to a point you kind of mentioned just a little bit ago. You talk about hope. So how does hope heal us?
Well, there is what hope does is it helps to, on a physiological level, it helps, interesting, I said, it helps to quiet activity in the centers of our brain that are responsible for fear and anger. So as fear and anger start to go down, then the more positive emotions and the more positive outlook like hope comes about. If we're in a constant state of fight or flight, we're burdened. We're still kind of tied up in what happened to us that was scary and or disturbing, and we're worried it's going to happen next. As we start as we become more hopeful, in fact, we're coming into the present more because the hope is based on our present experience. So if I'm able to quiet fight or flight, or if I'm able to melt that frozen body, then I have hope. And people who are more hopeful, we know people who are more hopeful are likely to do better with whatever kind of illness they have. They're likely to prevent illness more successfully. They're likely to deal with all the challenges in their lives, whether they're academic challenges for kids or work challenges for adults or challenges of having a serious illness for people of any age. They're likely to deal with those challenges more successfully. And in fact, even in situations that other people have deemed hopeless, for example, sometimes people with advanced cancer, it turns out that a number of those people who are much more hopeful, who do not accept the dismal prognosis, that being hopeful seems to be a crucial factor in living way beyond what anybody thought that you could do. So it's intrinsic. And as we're hopeful, as we're also encouraging all of the systems in our body to come into balance. So the immune system is coming into balance. Our cognitive systems are coming into balance. Our emotions are coming into balance. Our endocrine system, all the glands in our body. And we're just functioning in a very different way.
In your book, you also talk about the correlation between trauma and food, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about that for our listeners.
Sure. I think the most important thing is for everyone to realize that how we eat can affect our emotional state in very significant ways. That I haven't seen any other book on trauma that discusses the importance of diet. First of all, when we're traumatized, our gastrointestinal tract, from our mouth through our stomach, small intestine, large intestine, everything is disrupted, just as much as our mind is disrupted. So it's not functioning well. We're eating too fast, for example, and we're swallowing air, and we're not digesting our food properly, and small intestine is damaged. So we're not absorbing nutrients as well. The little villi, the projections, finger-like projections into the small intestine that absorb nutrients are damaged. The cells in the small intestine that line the small intestine will start to separate under extreme stress. And proteins will leak out of the small intestine into the bloodstream, sometimes proteins like gluten or the proteins that are there in milk. And they'll go in our bloodstream, they'll go to our brain, they'll cause inflammation and make us anxious and depressed. When we're under extreme stress, the microbiome, all the organisms in our gut, the balance of those organisms is disrupted. And with that disruption, there are effects on a nerve called the vagus nerve, VAGUS, which goes from the gastrointestinal tract back to the brain. When it's functioning well, it stimulates the brain's easy repair of itself. When it's functioning poorly, the brain doesn't repair itself so well. So in many ways, trauma can negatively affect our digestion and our brain and our psychological functioning. If we start eating in a way with a healthier diet, with a diet that has added nutrients, which I describe, I provide a program for them. If it's a diet that also includes foods and supplements that replenish the microbiome, the bacteria in our gut, we can help repair our gastrointestinal tract, and we can improve the functioning of our brain. One of the things that happens also that many of our listeners may notice is that when you're under extreme stress or you've experienced a traumatic event, the temptation is very much there to eat comfort foods. You feel better. You get a nice jolt of sugar, which puts out dopamine, which improves mood, puts out serotonin, which quiets us down, releases endorphins in the body, endogenous morphine-like substances that make us feel more peaceful, suppresses the traumatic memories. So we go to comfort food right in the beginning, but the problem is short-term solution is a long-run big problem, because after a while, those comfort foods create more stress. Dopamine goes down, serotonin goes down, the endorphins go down, and the gut continues to be disturbed. We put on weight. That weight creates more stress hormones, and so on. So what I've described in the book is what happens when we're traumatized, what happens to the gut, our desire, often our compulsion to eat comfort foods. And I say, understand this. Be compassionate with yourself, but understand that at a certain point, you really need to move into a diet that's healthier for you. And I describe that diet in detail. And if you do that, your gut will be restored, and it will contribute to restoring the functioning in your brain and restoring the way you think and feel and how you deal with other people. So this is a crucial element of trauma healing. And I don't know any other place that people can read about a trauma healing diet. And the place where I've written about it is in The Transformation. It's very important to me, been very important to people I've worked with. And I think it's the guidance is pretty easy to follow. And it's also understanding that we're all going to be different. We're all going to come at this in somewhat different ways, but that all of us can use food to make a difference and to improve our recovery from trauma. And incidentally, or not incidentally, importantly, if we do make these changes, we'll not only recover faster and better from the trauma, we'll prepare ourselves to be healthier, feel better, and have more energy for the rest of our lives.
Well, isn't that just making such a huge wave like your book, The Transformation, is? My goodness, Doctor. I think I have time for one more question, and before we let you go here, what do you want readers to take away from your book?
A couple of things are most important. First of all, trauma, adverse, challenging events are going to come to all of us. You're not alone. All of us, sooner or later, are going to go through this. It's a part of life. Second of all, it is possible to use the program in the transformation, Discovering Wholeness and Healing After Trauma, to use the program I describe, not only to recover from trauma, to restore physiological, physical, psychological balance, to restore our connections, which may have been damaged to other people, but also to discover new possibilities, new ways of being in our lives, new areas that may be important, new ways that we can make larger contributions to our family and our community and the world, and that this opportunity is open to all of us, regardless of age or education. So this is an invitation to this healing journey that I'm sort of sending out to everybody, that we can all do this. And this is also a journey that I'm on, and that literally hundreds of thousands of people who have used this method, both here in the United States and around the world, this is the journey they've been on, and this is the healing that has come to them. And that it's a healing that we've demonstrated repeatedly in scientific studies on precisely the program that's there in the transformation. So there is definitely hope, and all of us can partake of that hope.
Dr. Gordon, where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about your book and your events, and be part of your community?
Yes, a best place is on the Center for Mind Body Medicine website. I'm the founder and executive director of the Center for Mind Body Medicine. We use all the techniques and tools in the transformation in all of our work, which is in many, many communities across the United States. You can connect with me there on the website. You can see the programs we're doing. I'm going to be traveling around the United States, and there'll be public events, and you're welcome to come to those public events. And if you want to find clinicians or teachers or leaders of women's groups or clergy who are using this approach in your community, look on the website. You'll see our faculty. We have 130 faculty who are using this approach, and we have many, many hundreds, actually several thousand people who've come through our training who are using this approach. So look on the website, become part of our community, come to the events that I have, reach out to people whom you meet on the website.
Well, Dr. Gordon, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gordon. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, The Transformation, Discovering Wholeness and Healing After Trauma. The Transformation's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. Again, if you'd like to connect with Dr. Gordon, you can at the website cmbm.org. Dr. Gordon has events scheduled all across the country, so make sure to visit the website and click on events to see about one near you. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.